A man marries the most beautiful woman in the land. But she never eats. She never speaks. And when he discovers why, it's too late. This is the story of Kofi, a man who valued beauty above all else, who ignored every warning, and who learned that some mysteries should never be solved. What he found beneath his wife's perfect beauty will haunt him for the rest of his days. And it should haunt you too. Let us begin. Kofi was a wealthy merchant's son, blessed with good looks, charm, and more gold than sense. He had everything a young man could want, except satisfaction. Every festival, every gathering, Kofi would scan the crowd looking for the perfect bride. But no woman met his impossible standards. Too short, he would say. Too dark. Too light. Not graceful enough. Not refined enough. His mother grew exasperated. My son, she warned, perfection does not exist in this world. Choose a good woman with a kind heart, not just a pretty face. But Kofi would not listen. I will marry only the most beautiful woman, he declared. Even if I must search to the ends of the earth. The elders shook their heads. They knew this kind of pride. They had seen where it led. One day, during the Great Harvest Festival, a woman appeared in the village square. She was breathtaking. Tall and graceful, with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that seemed to hold the mysteries of the night sky. She wore rich fabrics that flowed like water, and jewelry that caught the sunlight like captured stars. Every movement was poetry. Every glance was magic. But most striking of all, she was completely, perfectly silent. While others laughed and sang and called out greetings, this woman moved through the crowd like a beautiful ghost. Her lips, full and perfectly shaped, never parted. Not to speak. Not to smile. Not even to breathe visibly. Kofi saw her and his heart stopped. That one, he whispered. That is the woman I will marry. Kofi approached her with his most charming smile. Greetings, beautiful stranger. I am Kofi, son of the merchant Kwame. What is your name? The woman looked at him with those deep, mysterious eyes. She did not speak. Are you from another village? I have traveled far and wide, but never have I seen anyone as lovely as you. Still, silence. Kofi was enchanted. He interpreted her silence as shyness, as mystery, as a challenge to be conquered. For 3 days, he pursued her through the festival, bringing gifts, composing poetry, performing feats to impress her. The woman accepted his gifts with graceful nods. She watched his performances with those dark, knowing eyes. But she never spoke. Never ate. Never drank. And when others asked her questions, she would only smile, a smile that never quite reached her eyes, and gesture that she could not speak. The villagers whispered among themselves. There is something strange about this woman, they said. Where did she come from? Why does she never eat or drink? What kind of person never speaks? But Kofi heard none of it. He saw only beauty, mystery, perfection. On the final day of the festival, Kofi made his decision. He approached the woman with a gold ring, his mother's ring, precious and ancient. Beautiful stranger, he said, kneeling before her, I do not know your name. I do not know where you come from. But I know that you are the woman I have been searching for all my life. Will you marry me? The woman looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded yes. The crowd gasped. Kofi's mother rushed forward, her face filled with concern. My son, wait. You know nothing about this woman. Where is her family? What is her name? Why does she not speak? Mother, Kofi said, his voice sharp with impatience, she is perfect. That is all I need to know. But son. Enough. I am a man grown. I will marry whom I choose. His mother stepped back, tears in her eyes. The elders exchanged dark glances. They knew this story. They had heard it before, in different forms, with different faces. But always, it ended the same way. That night, an old woman came to Kofi's compound. She was ancient beyond reckoning, with white hair and eyes that had seen too much. "Young man," she said, her voice like dry leaves, "I must warn you about this woman you intend to marry." Kofi barely looked up from admiring his bride-to-be, who sat in the corner, silent and beautiful. "What warning, grandmother?" "She is not what she appears to be. She is beautiful." "That is what she appears to be, and that is what she is. Beauty is a mask, child. Have you not noticed? She never eats. She never drinks. She never speaks. Have you asked yourself why? She is modest and refined. Unlike the loud, common women of this village." The old woman's eyes narrowed. "You think silence is refinement? You think a woman who cannot eat is natural? Foolish boy. There are things that walk among us wearing human skin. Things that hunger for what we have. Things that—" "Enough." Kofi stood, his face flushed with anger. "You are jealous, old woman. You cannot stand to see my happiness. Leave my compound, and do not return." The old woman looked at him with pity and resignation. "When you discover the truth," she said quietly, "it will be too late. But perhaps that is the price you must pay for your pride." She left, and Kofi returned to gazing at his silent bride, convinced of his good fortune. The wedding was magnificent. Kofi spared no expense. Drummers played, dancers performed, and a great feast was prepared with the finest foods and sweetest palm wine. Through it all, the bride sat silent and still. When others ate, she did not. When others drank, she did not. When others sang and danced, she only watched with those deep, unreadable eyes. "She is too refined for such common pleasures," Kofi explained to anyone who asked. "She is above such things." But his mother watched, and worried. The elders watched, and knew. And in the shadows, the old woman watched, and waited. When the ceremony was complete, Kofi led his new wife to the fine house he had prepared. As he closed the door behind them, shutting out the world, he felt a moment of triumph. He had won. He had found perfection. He had proved everyone wrong. If only he had listened. The first weeks of marriage were unusual. Kofi's bride was everything he had dreamed of in appearance. She was graceful, she was beautiful, she was compliant. She never argued, never complained, never made demands. But she also never spoke. Never ate. Never seemed to sleep. At mealtimes, Kofi would prepare elaborate dishes, hoping to tempt her. "Surely you must be hungry," he would say, placing rich stews and fresh fruits before her. She would smile that strange smile and shake her head. "Just a little. Even the finest woman must eat." Again, the smile. The head shake. And those eyes, watching him with something he couldn't quite name. Amusement. Hunger. Anticipation. At night, she would lie beside him, her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Kofi would wake in the darkness to find her watching him, her face expressionless, her chest neither rising nor falling with breath. "Are you well?" he would ask, disturbed despite himself. A nod. That smile. Nothing more. As weeks became months, Kofi's triumph began to curdle into unease. His wife was wasting away before his eyes, or rather, she should have been. Any person who never ate or drank should wither and die. But she remained exactly as she had been, perfectly beautiful, perfectly still, perfectly unchanged. And there were other things. The servants refused to enter their chambers. "Master," they whispered, "your wife, she does not breathe. We have watched her for hours, and her chest never moves. She breathes quietly," Kofi snapped. "You are imagining things. But he had noticed it too. In the dead of night, he would press his ear to her chest and hear nothing. No heartbeat. No breath. No sound of life at all. And then there was the smell. Faint at first, barely noticeable. But growing stronger with each passing day. A sweet, sickly smell, like flowers left too long in a closed room. Like something rotting beneath perfume. Kofi's mother came to visit and recoiled. "My son, what is that smell? And your wife, she looks the same as the day she arrived. Not thinner, not changed. How is this possible? Leave us alone, mother. You were against this marriage from the beginning. Because I could see what you refused to see. This woman is not natural. Send her away, while you still can." But Kofi's pride would not allow it. To send away his perfect bride would be to admit he had been wrong. To admit the villagers had been right. To admit his mother had been right. So he kept his silent wife, and tried to ignore the growing wrongness of their marriage. It was his friend Kweku who planted the seed of true investigation. "Brother," Kweku said one evening, after much palm wine had loosened his tongue, "forgive me, but I must speak. Your wife, have you ever seen her eat? Anything at all? She is refined. She eats privately. Have you ever heard her voice? Even a whisper? She is modest and quiet. Have you ever seen her open her mouth?" Kofi froze. The question struck him like a blow because, now that he thought about it, no. He had never seen his wife's mouth open. Not to eat. Not to yawn. Not to speak. Not even to breathe. Her lips were always closed. Perfectly, perpetually closed. "That proves nothing," Kofi said, but his voice was uncertain. "Brother, I say this because I care for you. There are stories, old stories about creatures that walk in human form. Creatures that cannot eat because they have no." "Get out," Kofi said quietly. "Please, just listen. Get out." Kweku left, shaking his head sadly. And Kofi sat alone in the darkness, the seed of doubt now planted, beginning to grow. That night, Kofi could not sleep. He lay beside his silent wife, watching her perfect profile in the moonlight, and whispered, "My wife, why do you never speak?" She did not move. Did not turn. Did not acknowledge that she had heard. "Please," he said, his voice breaking, "just say something. Anything. Even if your voice is damaged, even if you can only whisper. I need to hear you. Nothing. Open your mouth. Show me that you can." She turned her head slowly to look at him. In the moonlight, her eyes were black and bottomless. And for the first time, Kofi saw something in those eyes, a warning. But he could not stop now. The doubt had grown too large, the fear too pressing. "I am your husband," he said, trying to sound firm. "I command you. Open your mouth." She sat up slowly, gracefully. She looked at him for a long moment. And then she shook her head. "No." And in that gesture, in that refusal, Kofi felt true fear. The next day, Kofi went to the old woman who had warned him. He found her in her small hut at the edge of the village, grinding herbs. "Grandmother," he said, his pride finally broken, "I need your help." She did not look up. "So, you have finally begun to see. My wife, there is something wrong. She never eats, never speaks, never. I think she never breathes." "I know. What is she?" Now the old woman looked up, her ancient eyes sad. "Tell me, boy. Have you ever seen her open her mouth?" "No. Never." "That is because she cannot." "Cannot. But everyone can open their mouth." That's not possible." "It is possible," the old woman said, "when the person is not truly a person at all." She stood and went to a shelf, pulling down an ancient, leather-bound book. Its pages were yellow with age, covered in symbols Kofi did not recognize. "Listen carefully," she said, "for this knowledge may save your life, or it may already be too late. In the old days, before the great kingdoms, there were creatures that envied humans. They envied our lives, our warmth, our ability to eat and taste and speak and love. These creatures wanted what we had. So they learned to take our form." "Take our form? You mean? Your wife is not a woman. She is something wearing the shape of a woman. We call them the Adze, the empty ones. They appear beautiful because they steal beauty from those around them. But they cannot eat, because they have no mouth. What you see, those perfect lips, is just an illusion. A mask over emptiness." Kofi's blood ran cold. No mouth. But then how? How does she survive? That, boy, is the terrible part. The old woman turned pages in the ancient book until she found what she sought. The illustration made Kofi's stomach turn. It showed a beautiful woman, and beneath her chin, hidden in the shadows, another mouth. A real mouth. Grotesque and wrong. "The Adze must feed," the old woman said quietly. "But not on food. They feed on life itself. At night, when their victim sleeps, the true mouth emerges. And it drinks." "Drinks what?" "The essence of life. Your breath. Your vitality. Your soul, slowly, night by night." "Have you felt weaker? More tired?" Kofi realized with horror that yes, he had. For weeks now, he had been exhausted, drained, unable to wake fully even after a full night's sleep. He had blamed it on worry, on stress. But now, "She has been feeding on me," he whispered. "Every night, while I slept beside her, she was." "Yes. And now that you know, she will not let you leave." The Adze does not release its prey once the feeding has begun. She will drain you completely, and then move on to another victim, wearing a new face, beginning again. "How do I stop her?" The old woman looked at him with pity. "There is only one way. You must see her true face. You must make her reveal what she really is. Only then can she be driven away." "How do I do that?" "Force her mouth open. Tear away the illusion. But be warned, what you see will haunt you for the rest of your days." That night, Kofi returned home with a resolve born of terror. He found his wife in their chamber, sitting by the window, beautiful and still as always. Looking at her now, knowing what she was, he could finally see the wrongness. The way she never blinked. The way her chest never rose or fell. The way shadows seemed to cling to her, even in bright light. "Wife," he said, his voice steady despite his fear, "we must talk." She turned to look at him. Those deep, dark eyes. "I know what you are." For the first time, he saw real reaction on her face. A flicker of something. Surprise. Anger. Fear. "I know you are not human. I know you have no mouth. I know you have been feeding on me night after night." She stood slowly, and as she did, the air in the room seemed to grow cold. "Show me," Kofi demanded, his voice shaking. "Show me your true face." She shook her head. "No. I am not asking. Show me." She remained still, but the wrongness was growing. The shadows around her were deepening, writhing. The sweet, rotten smell was intensifying. "Show me." And then, because he had demanded it, because the illusion could only last so long once it was challenged, she began to change. It started with her face. The perfect beauty began to ripple, like a reflection in disturbed water. Her skin, which had seemed so smooth, began to crack like a porcelain mask. And her mouth, those perfect lips, they flickered. One moment there, the next moment, nothing. Just smooth, unbroken skin where a mouth should be. No lips. No teeth. Nothing. Just an empty, featureless surface. Kofi stared in horror. You truly have no mouth, he whispered. But then she tilted her head back, exposing her throat. And Kofi saw the truth. Beneath her chin, hidden in the shadow where neck met jaw, something was moving. The skin was splitting, tearing open like a rotten fruit. And emerging from that tear was a mouth. But not a human mouth. This was a nightmare mouth, a mouth that should not exist. Wide and ragged, filled with teeth that were too long, too sharp, too many. A mouth that gaped like a wound, dripping with something dark and viscous. The mouth that had been feeding on him every night. Pressing against his chest while he slept, drawing out his life breath by breath. The creature that had been his wife threw back her head, and from that terrible throat mouth came a sound. Not words. Not quite a scream. Something between a hiss and a laugh, like wind through a graveyard. Kofi ran. He burst from the chamber, running blindly through his house, hearing behind him that terrible sound, that not laughter echoing through the halls. He crashed through the front door and into the night, shouting for help. Villagers emerged from their homes, torches in hand. The creature. Kofi screamed. In my house. The thing that pretended to be my wife. And as if summoned by his words, she emerged. She stood in the doorway of Kofi's house, and she was no longer even trying to maintain the illusion. The beautiful woman was gone. What stood there was something else entirely. The skin hung in tatters. The eyes were black pits. And that mouth, that horrible throat mouth, gaped wide, revealing an endless darkness within. The villagers screamed. Some ran. Others stood frozen in terror. But the old woman stepped forward, holding a burning branch and chanting words in a language older than memory. She threw something at the creature, salt and herbs, and blessed earth. The thing that had been Kofi's wife recoiled. It made that terrible sound again, that hiss laugh, and then it spoke. Not with the throat mouth, but somehow directly into their minds. Foolish mortals. I could have fed slowly. I could have kept him for years. But you had to know. You had to see. Now you have seen, and you will never forget. With a sound like tearing fabric, the creature's human form collapsed completely. What remained was something that hurt to look at, a shadow with that terrible mouth, eyes like stars dying, a hunger that could never be filled. And then it was gone, fleeing into the night, leaving behind only that sweet, sickly smell of decay. Kofi survived, but he was never the same. The feeding had taken its toll. His hair, which had been black, was now shot through with white. His face, which had been young and handsome, was now gaunt and lined. He had aged years in mere months. But worse than the physical damage was the knowledge. Every night, when he closed his eyes, he saw that mouth. That terrible, impossible mouth opening beneath the chin of beauty. You were warned, his mother said gently, as she nursed him back to health. Everyone warned you. But you were blinded by beauty, by pride, by your desire for perfection. I know, Kofi whispered. I know. The old woman visited him one last time before he recovered enough to leave his bed. You are lucky, she said. Most who encounter the Adze do not survive. She could have drained you completely. But your friend's intervention, your mother's concern, my warnings, they planted enough doubt to make you investigate before it was too late. Will she find another victim? Perhaps. The Adze are eternal. They move from place to place, wearing different faces, seeking those who value beauty above all else. They feed on vanity, on greed, on the hunger for perfection. How do we stop them? We don't. We can only warn others, as I warned you. We can only hope that the next victim will listen. But there will always be those who, like you, are so blinded by beauty that they cannot see the horror beneath. The next time you meet someone who seems too perfect, ask yourself, what might they be hiding?